Hi, it is me, Ian the Duelist, and today I wanted to talk to you about a great issue I am seeing in HEMA right now, and that is the hyperfixation that HEMA has developed in the realm of tournaments and expertise in this discipline. Tournaments are a way we can measure our skill in HEMA sparring to be exact. They are there in order to make ourselves the best fencers possible when using the methodology of HEMA. But that cannot happen without HEMA. What do I mean with HEMA? Without historical European martial arts. When someone states an expertise in this discipline, we cannot merely look at their resume of tournament medals, because quite frankly, that is not the complete picture. Tournament medals are there in order to evaluate the skill in fencing, in sparring. They are there in order to state who is the better fencer. But fencing is only one part of HEMA. It is the martial arts part, but there is also historical. We're doing historical European martial arts. When we look at some debates in HEMA, this fact tends to be forgotten. For example, many times I have argued that lighter rapiers that do not have a very favorable cross-section would not make it through the clothing of the 17th century. And I stand by this fact because I have evidence backing it up. And there is no amount of tournament proficiency and medals that is going to change this evidence. HEMA is both a martial art or sport, whatever, a combat sport. It is both a combat sport and a discipline of academic research that requires knowledge and study in the application of the scientific method to reach certain conclusions. It requires experiments, many of which are quite lacking right now. So, we do need to find a way that we can preserve the historical part of HEMA. This is why it started, because everything about the usage of weapons such as this was lost. Most of what we need to know to understand how to fight with a bayonet, with a rapier, with a broadsword, with a messer, was lost because of the sportification, and also because simply things are lost in history, are forgotten. But it was still forgotten, and we had to remake it in order to turn it into a discipline that implements both history and martial prowess. I have not been able to compete because I do not have the resources to compete. I still lack equipment. I've only ever made my own blades, partially if not entirely. The only partial blade I have are these that are made out of machete blades, and this, which is a rapier blade that I made a hilt for. Everything else I made myself. And my blades are of course not regulated, which means that they cannot be accepted into tournaments. Obviously, it's a totally reasonable thing to expect, but an annoying one nonetheless, especially considering how expensive these blades are. Well, that does not erase my 6 years of sparring, of study that I have. As stated previously, I made these blades. I use these blades in sparring almost all the time. And I use a lot of, and I actually like to switch it up. I don't only stick to my trusty spadroon, I also like to use broadswords and rapiers. I'm also quite fond of the rapier, to be honest. But I also use long swords and cavalry swords and anything that I can use, axes, messers, cutlasses. I actually started my steel sword training with this here cutlass that I made out of a machete blade. I use everything, and I have 6 years using everything. Anything that I can use sort of like a sword, I have used like a sword. No amount of lacking in tournaments is going to erase that experience, and no amount of tournament medals is going to change the evidence that I have for my theories in terms of effectiveness of certain blade types. There is the issue of cutting, there is the issue of clothing. We often have HEMA coaches who do not even read the manuals or understand the historical context, or have even measured the antiques or have any familiarity with the material culture that we use. And if you're a coach in historical European martial arts, you should have at least a basic understanding of these things. You should not know as much as a bladesmith, but you should know enough to handle yourself, to understand the consensus in the current understanding of things, to know the consensus that there is amongst people who deal with the antiques or reproduce blades. We really need to upgrade our academic prowess in HEMA, because if we don't, we will very, very quickly lose this to a sportification where the only thing that evaluates what caliber of a HEMA practitioner you are is a medal, and that is not the case. HEMA stands for Historical European Martial Arts. And if we are to be competent, complete HEMA practitioners, we must know both the historical part, understand the research and academic rigor and evidence and context and blade design, as much as we need to have our bodies and minds trained to understand and dominate timing, distance, and the line. We must look at the original pieces as much as we need to train footwork to be a complete practitioner of historical European martial arts. Thank you for listening to this little ramble I'm having, and fence on.